Relativism and Cultural Universals. Let's begin with the conclusions of my prior video, the one about the world tailored for idiots. Man as the measure of all things. There have been individuals with beautiful souls who have ridiculed this conclusion regarding Protagoras' declaration as somewhat trite and unoriginal. Given to acquired, if not obvious, nothing could be more wrong. The concept expressed by Abdera, philosopher considered by some as the first historical example of a relativistic view of reality, is present in the history of thought and has been interpreted in many ways, often contradictory. If indeed man is the measure of all things, then the perspective of each individual and each culture has equal dignity. On the other hand, it can be said that man is the constant of every culture, and this can lead one to think that there is a concept that has intrigued me for a long time, that of cultural universals. The culture of the Western world is derived from a long-standing tradition of cultural absolutes, which are markedly different from universals. Having been the dominant culture of large geographical areas for millennia, and finally hegemonic on the planet as Europeans and Westerners, from the times of Athens through Rome to the British and French dominations and colonialisms, down to the American declination of this succession of empires, the West has been and still is today the seat of a feeling of possessing values that many of us perceive as universal. Examples of this are the dignity of the person, the freedom of the individual, and many others, which have replaced absolute values such as the superiority of the white man over all peoples and European civilization as the culmination of an inevitable historical progress. Not too paradoxically in this specific cultural context, where in other cases the concept of cultural relativism was also born, which precisely allowed us to transition from absolutes to universals, and then surrender ourselves to occasionally extreme relativism, thereby challenging the notion of objective truth. The anthropology that developed in the 20th century has established the groundwork for a perspective on cultures as unique systems with equal importance. For this reason, we have arrived to observe, for instance, Australian Aborigines not as uncivilized savages, but as custodians of their own rich and worthy culture, deserving of respect and study. This process of relativization comes into existence in Western society as an open society, and it is itself a product that is derived from and shaped by our culture. Anyone with at least some experience in cultures such as Middle Eastern and North African or Asian cultures has been able to witness firsthand the apparent lack of interest that those cultural areas appear to have for a relativistic perspective on culture. Cultures with strong religious foundations, particularly those deeply rooted in faith, struggle to perceive culture as a relative fact. They can sometimes be pragmatically tolerant and inclusive, as was the case, for example, with the Turkish Empire in some phases of its history, but these are very sporadic phenomena. By the way, it must be said that the periods in which tolerance was practiced as a guiding principle of the government and society were also the phases in which Turkish civilization, otherwise strictly Islamic, experienced its moment of greatest splendor, thanks to the reception of intelligences and energies fleeing from much less tolerant and open places, like large parts of Europe at that time and many subsequent epochs. Religious thoughts have within them the imperative to reject any form of cultural relativism, opposing it with absolute moral imperatives dictated by the peculiar mythology of each religion. This is true today, as it was true in the past, even in the Western region. The Catholic Church, not to mention the Russian Orthodox Church, is strongly aligned with the politics of the Russian regime and sees cultural relativism as a formidable enemy. Thus, even the ideologies of the 20th century are incapable of tolerating relativism. On one hand, we have the Marxist political lineages, with their deterministic and magically teleological vision of history. On the other hand, fascist ideologies based on the role of race and the alleged spirits and destinies of peoples are also blindly teleological. Theologies without gods, but full of prophets, cannot even tolerate alternative visions of the world, whether they are those advocated by antagonistic ideological groups belonging to the same society, those coming from other civilizations, or those belonging to contemporary primitive peoples. It is unimaginable within these ideological frameworks that such unorthodox doctrines can provide contributions to the culture of our time, being in these rigidly teleological visions of history, adversaries, or even worse, remnants of an era that has been surpassed by history itself. A genuine waste that needs to be eliminated, both in a physical sense and to pave the way for the future that only the prophets of these ideologies have been able to envision. The open society is the sole form of human aggregation that has made cultural relativism one of its founding aspects, utilizing it as a crucial tool for comprehending the intercultural complexity of the world. Modern cultural anthropology, which originated not by chance in the same countries where open society has taken the form of liberal and social democratic democracies, has irreversibly adopted a methodological approach based on a relativistic vision. The root of this innovative reading key of reality is also in the West, due to a historical fact not to be underestimated. It derives from relativism as a fundamental element of the physical sciences, since Galilean relativity, the foundation of all modern physics and the seed of Einstein's own relativity. From that point, relativism has been borrowed into nearly all other areas until it acquired genuinely distinct interpretations when the humanities adopted it, and subsequently became ingrained in the cognitive framework of substantial portions of our society. However, this attitude appears to lead to more than one paradox, if implemented in a pedestrian manner both to research and to our vision of human civilization as a whole. Cultural anthropology has embraced relativism as a methodology, but apart from certain enthusiasts, this discipline has immediately equipped itself with a skeptical and analytical relativism, maintaining it on a pragmatic level of practicality and real-world applicability, and attempting to steer clear of ideological drifts towards an anarchically relativistic perspective on ethics. Expected caution from science is absent in cultural relativism that pervades society, lacking the anticipated prudence of a scientific discipline. Overall, if indeed initially this true subversion of the paradigm of our vision of human civilizations had to oppose with all its strength those that we will call cultural absolutes, that is, the ideological foundations of the supremacist and racist attitude of Western culture towards other cultures. Today, the extremism of this attitude seems to lead us towards a timid immobility that refuses the need to push other societies and Western society towards a convergent and shared point of view on human dignity, human rights, and the importance of a common understanding, struggling strenuously so that certain achievements of ours become cultural heritage for everyone. The reason is what we were saying previously. The other societies, I would dare to state all the societies that have not adopted a democratic model of Western origin, are not interested in meeting us halfway, at least in the perspective of the new absolutists of cultural relativism. Excuse me, the paradoxical play on words, but the fact is that the paradoxes that relativism and cultural absolutism can cause are numerous. Is an open society perhaps a goal of history, even though it must by its very nature avoid getting entangled in metaphysical teleologies? Should cultural relativism therefore embrace the totalitarian view of religions and ideologies as belonging to certain cultures? Progress. As a finalist process, it clearly does not exist, but is it not a fact that all peoples aim unanimously to improve their living conditions? Cultural relativism may conceal certain forms of crypto-racism, functioning as a subtle method to maintain a distance from the other. In some anti-Western speeches, it is not entirely possible to eliminate the scent of something resembling it. Paradoxes. In the end, demanding that democracy be an absolute value and that those who do not have it would like to have it is a form of cultural chauvinism. Iranians, particularly Iranian women who rebel against the theocratic regime governing their country, still favor it over an alternative democratic regime based on the rule of law due to its importance and significance in shaping the future of their nation. Chinese fits well in its increasingly autocratic and militaristic political regime, and it gives it special advantages, while the Taiwanese, with their democratic flaws, are the ones who feel disconnected from their culture. Is the North Korean culturally destined to feed on grass, on meadows, in a fully Orwellian existence, and the deviants are the South Koreans who have achieved an advanced economy in a society that, although peculiarly Asian, has given soul and body to a democratic life with all its limits? There are an excessive number of questions. In addition, they multiply excessively if we also take into account those posed by the numerous flaws of our Western societies. When attempting to reflect on these matters, one cannot help but wonder if there are any invariant, incontrovertibly universal elements present among the diverse human cultures. However, given our understanding of how such a topic can be perceived from a European standpoint, and in order to avoid any accusations from our anti-Western acquaintances regarding neo-colonialist inclinations due to my privileged status as a cisgender white male, I prefer to commence this contemplation by referencing the African philosopher Kwasi Beredu and his publication titled Cultural Universals and Particulars, an African Perspective, which provides valuable insights into the subject matter. Among the contributions of the Ghanaian philosopher to the issue of cultural universals is the proposal of a critical universalism, which recognizes that despite cultural differences, there are some fundamental human values and principles that are universal, an intuitive but well-argued point of view. His reasoning commences from the assumption that because there is intercultural communication among all cultures, the presence of universal cultural elements can be demonstrated through reduction ad absurdum, thereby establishing the validity of his argument. Without their existence, intercultural communication would be impossible to achieve or establish. These universal principles can be employed as a foundation for assessing cultural practices, guiding us to decline the concept of absolute relativism, in accordance with which all cultural practices possess equal validity. Viredu argues that cultures have the capacity to evolve and that it is both possible and necessary for critical evaluations to lead to cultural reforms. These reforms involve the modification or abandonment of harmful or archaic practices in favor of practices that are more fair and humane. All this gives a productive comparison between cultures and their positive mutual influence, a global form of open societies. It is refreshing to see that one of the most significant intellectuals on the continent, who has endured the greatest hardships due to Western colonialism, is now being connected to the society that upholds the values of human rights, a society that has been shaped by the very same colonizing Western powers. The critiques that have been raised against cultural relativism by those who want to defend it certainly do not stop at these points of contention. In philosophical terms, the doubt has been raised that the extremization of relativistic thinking can only lead to a nihilistic view of society. An example is Jan Gewiek's book, Rationality and Relativism. The student of Popper aims to establish a balance between the need to recognize the validity of different cultural perspectives, relativism, and the importance of maintaining a certain degree of objective and universal standards of rationality. We are encountering a strong criticism of the extreme tendencies of cultural relativism, arguing that an excessively permissive perspective can result in a form of radical relativism that denies any possibility of objective judgment or evaluation. Simultaneously, Gervier acknowledges the constraints of rationality as envisioned in a Western viewpoint, urging for a more receptive attitude towards the diverse manifestations of logic and reasoning found in different cultures. These are obviously reflections that resemble those discovered in the foundations of cultural anthropology, such as Levi-Strauss, when he asserts that the thought of savage is logical, just like ours, but only in situations where ours pertains to the understanding of the cosmos, to which it concurrently acknowledges physical and semantic attributes. Therefore, it can be inferred that human thought exhibits a fundamental logical framework that is shared across civilizations, irrespective of their complexity or organization, whether they are simple or structured. Going a little more into the concrete, what could be the cultural universals, this sort of hypothetical native code common to every culture? One of the lists reported by a small number of individuals who are interested in this topic is more or less as follows. 1. Language and communication. All societies have developed one or more forms of language in order to facilitate communication. Language can vary greatly in structure, yet all languages and other potential forms of language provide a means to express ideas, desires, emotions, and thoughts. Furthermore, each language and almost all languages can be translated into any other language. 2. Social norms and legal systems. Every society possesses a collection of regulations that dictate permissible conduct within its cultural framework. These can encompass formal laws as well as social norms that are not explicitly written down. 3. Rites and ceremony ritual practices, which can vary from rites of passage to celebrations of community or religious events, are commonly found in all cultures. These rituals often mark important milestones in life of individuals or seasonal events. 4. Family structures and kinship systems. Although the composition and definition of families may vary, every society recognizes certain kinship ties and organizes individuals into family structures. 5. Art and aesthetic expression. All cultures produce some form of art. Whether it's music, dance, painting, sculpture, poetry, or other forms of creativity, art appears to mirror and convey cultural values and human experiences in a universal and timeless manner. Concepts of ethics and justice. Although specific laws and ethical norms may differ, every society has concepts of right and wrong that guide moral behavior and decisions of justice. 7. Religion and spirituality. Although specific beliefs and religious practices vary widely, the tendency to believe in spiritual or divine forces and to practice forms of worship appears universal. So, summarizing and reducing the issue to the bone: language, law, rituals, family, art, and more. It could indeed also be argued that there are duplicates among these concepts. Already a first reading of this extensive list immediately reveals some omissions and missing items. The economy, for example. All peoples have, in one way or another, created a form of economy that allows individuals to exchange goods and services. Then there is humor. Wetzel believes that humor should also be included among the universal aspects of human culture. Brown, among the dozens, hundreds of others, mentions cooking, which he connects to the ubiquitous knowledge of fire that is possessed by all current humans. We are all united by a common sense of taste, on the other hand. In general, our senses unite us. Christakis cites 8, including love and friendship. Anthropological and sociological studies mention other lists, not always overlapping, many of several tens, if not hundreds. Statistical studies have also been conducted on cultural universals. You can continue attempting to create lists until you become ill, but that is not the main objective. The lists are endless, and the task of compiling and comparing them. It eventually falls on the anthropological and sociological analysis of universals. Here I am trying to observe the thing from a philosophical and cultural perspective, and nevertheless very synthetic. The topic is intriguing. Please read some of the books and publications I leave in the description. Some I have explicitly mentioned, others not. There is truly something to have fun. The point is obvious, but I will utilize Viridou's words to avoid irritating accusations of simplistic reduction. What is the factor that unites us? At least the initial part of a response is not difficult. It is our biocultural identity as homines sapientis. Obviously precisely, but not trivial if held as a fixed point of critical and perceptive reflection. The 5 senses, upright posture, 10 fingers, opposable thumb, our adaptable brain, binocular vision, our common needs and universal atavistic fears, as well as a still largely unexplored but certainly vast range of innate components in the human mind, make us all inherently human in the same manner. The differences between individuals and cultures are evident, but we must mitigate our need to relativize in order to respect the other, as emphasized by the often cited V. Redu from his African perspective. To begin with, because human rights are claims that individuals inherently possess the right to make, solely based on their fundamental status as human beings. I also mentioned Diredo here. What prompted me to this reflection is the need to rethink what makes us all human, but also to strengthen myself against those who advocate a relativistic view of rights and freedoms, claiming that the individual does not exist in other cultures. It has rightly been stated that our view of the individual as the subject and object of inalienable and universal rights is not at all ancient. It is accurate. Nevertheless, asserting that the societies preceding ours, specifically Nazi Germany with its legalized extermination of the diverse, American eugenic delusions, the racist basis of the British Empire, the Roman Empire with slavery as an economic cornerstone, ancient Greece with the perception of the barbarian as non-human, did not envision the concept of the individual is completely unfounded and lacks historical validity. It is like saying that contemporary societies subjugated by oppressive regimes such as the Iranian, Afghan, and Chinese ones are in this unacceptable situation because they do not consider the individual important. I have been extremely long-winded, so I want to close by leaving open the possibility of returning to analyze this interesting topic in the future. I conclude by saying that when we need to equip ourselves with cognitive tools to understand the world, a crucial factor for truly free thinking is a strongly critical approach, as much as possible purified from ideologies, beliefs, and prejudices, but also from a misunderstood tolerance towards unacceptable practices and ideas. Humanity has only one way to eliminate the greatest of evils, the most horrendous of atavisms, which is war. A mutual understanding that, however, establishes clear boundaries on what is not acceptable. In this, the open society cannot be timid and submissive anymore, but it must regain pride for its achievements and fight so that the rights we have obtained for ourselves can, little by little, become the heritage of all humans around the world. The other choice is a future where nobody will possess these rights in any place,